Empty her bag. Grace Delmore didn't argue. She simply watched as security officers tipped her handbag onto the executive conference table, scattering notebooks, lip balm, loose receipts, pens, a half-finished crossword, and a faded photograph of her parents before the silent board. She was the last employee near the chairman's office. Vice President Isadora Fenwick declared, her certainty louder than the evidence. No one questioned her. No one defended the curvy operations specialist, standing alone beneath dozens of judging eyes. Then every whisper vanished. Damian Kessler entered, the billionaire owner, the impeccably composed Mafia boss. Everyone expected him to dismiss Grace without hesitation. Instead, he opened his own briefcase. The missing Kessler family watch rested inside. Silence consumed the room. Then, before anyone could recover, Damian knelt beside Grace and quietly returned every scattered belonging to her bag before offering a sincere public apology. For several long seconds, no one moved. The executives, who had eagerly watched Grace's handbag emptied across the polished conference table, suddenly found the grain of the wood fascinating. The security officers stood frozen, their professional confidence dissolving into visible discomfort. Damian remained kneeling without the slightest trace of irritation. He picked up the first item, a blue notebook with dozens of colored tabs protruding from its pages. He brushed away an invisible speck of dust before placing it carefully into Grace's bag. Next came a calculator with worn buttons, a fountain pen repaired with clear tape, a tiny sewing kit, a folded grocery list, a reusable coffee punch card that needed only one more stamp before earning a free drink. Each ordinary object seemed painfully intimate under the eyes of the executive board. Grace wanted the floor to open beneath her. She had survived impossible project deadlines, impossible clients, impossible department heads. Yet nothing compared to having the contents of her personal life silently catalogued by people who barely knew her name. When Damian finished returning the last item, he zipped the bag closed himself before standing. His voice was calm enough to silence the entire room. "Miss Delmore." Grace finally met his eyes. "I owe you an apology." No one could remember the chairman apologizing to anyone during a board meeting. He continued without hesitation. "My watch was never in your possession. It remained in my briefcase, because I placed it there before this meeting. You were subjected to an accusation that should never have occurred under my authority." His gaze shifted toward the security team. The search should never have begun before confirming the facts. Both officers straightened instinctively. "We sincerely apologize, Miss Delmore," one said immediately. The other nodded. "It was our mistake." Damian looked toward the executives surrounding the table. "The mistake belongs to all of us." No names, no raised voice, no public humiliation. Yet several senior executives lowered their heads, as though they had personally been reprimanded. Only Isadora Fenwick managed to maintain her composure, though the confident expression she had worn moments earlier had vanished. "It appeared reasonable," she said carefully. The circumstances suggested an assumption," Damian interrupted. His tone remained perfectly even. "Facts should always arrive before conclusions." Silence answered him. Grace tightened her grip on her handbag. "It's all right," she said quietly. Every head turned toward her. She forced a small smile. The watch was found. That's what matters. To everyone else's surprise, she truly meant it. She had learned years ago that arguing with embarrassment only made it louder. The faster everyone moved on, the sooner they would forget. Damian studied her expression for a moment that felt much longer than it actually was. "I appreciate your professionalism," he said. "Not many people would recover their composure so quickly after what just happened. I've had practice, Grace said, a note of dry humor slipping through despite herself. Something flickered across Damian's face. Not quite a smile, but close. Then I owe you more than an apology. I owe you my attention going forward. He didn't elaborate. The meeting resumed, subdued and awkward, and Grace returned to her desk, feeling the particular exhaustion that comes from surviving public humiliation while everyone around you pretends nothing happened. Over the following weeks, small things began to shift. Damian started attending the operations team's Monday briefings, meetings he had never once appeared at in the 3 years Grace had worked at Blackwood International. He asked pointed, informed questions that suggested he'd actually read the reports beforehand, rather than skimming executive summaries the way most chairmen did. And more than once, Grace noticed his attention settling on her longer than professional necessity required. Isadora Fenwick noticed too, and her already thin patience for Grace grew thinner still. "You should be careful," Isadora told her one afternoon, cornering her near the break room with the particular smile of someone delivering a threat disguised as advice. "People talk when the chairman starts paying attention to certain employees. It rarely ends well for the employee." "I'm doing my job, Isadora, that's all." "Of course you are." Isadora's smile didn't waver. "Just remember who actually belongs in that boardroom, and who's simply being tolerated there." Grace said nothing, but the comment lodged itself somewhere uncomfortable, joining a lifetime of similar remarks she'd absorbed and quietly filed away. The real turning point came 3 months later, when Blackwood's largest client threatened to walk following a catastrophic shipping delay that had cascaded through 4 different departments. The executive team convened an emergency session, everyone talking over everyone else, blame circulating faster than solutions. Grace, sitting at the far end of the table, where operations specialists were traditionally seated and traditionally ignored, finally spoke up. "The delay didn't start in shipping," she said, her voice cutting cleanly through the chaos. "It started 3 weeks ago, when procurement approved a vendor switch without notifying logistics. I flagged it in a memo that went to 17 people. No one responded." The room fell silent. Isadora's face went rigid. "Do you have that memo?" Damian asked quietly. Grace pulled out her phone and read the timestamp aloud, along with the full distribution list. Isadora's name sat third from the top. The subsequent investigation, conducted with the same quiet thoroughness Damian had shown the day of the watch, revealed a pattern that went considerably deeper than one ignored memo. Isadora had spent over a year systematically burying operational warnings from Grace's team, protecting her own department's numbers at the expense of the company's broader interests, and ensuring that whenever something eventually went wrong, the operations team, quiet, unglamorous, easy to blame, absorbed the consequences. Isadora Fenwick resigned within the month. No dramatic confrontation, no public spectacle, just a quiet exit, dressed up as a mutual parting of ways, the kind executives were always afforded, regardless of what they'd actually done. Grace was promoted to Director of Operations shortly afterward. It was, everyone agreed, long overdue. "You could have taken credit for catching this sooner," Damian told her one evening, the two of them alone in his office, reviewing the final report. "You'd flagged Isadora's pattern in your notes, months before any of this became public." "I didn't want to be right about someone falling apart," Grace said simply. "I wanted the company to work better. Those aren't always the same goal, but this time they were." Damian studied her, something unreadable in his expression. "You've never once asked me for anything. Not a raise, not a promotion, not even an explanation for why the watch ended up implicating you that day." Grace considered the question honestly. "Would you have told me if I'd asked?" Someone planted it in your desk drawer that morning, hoping the confusion would cost you your job before the search even started. I found the security footage 2 days later. I chose not to make it public because I didn't want your career defined by someone else's cruelty. He paused. I should have told you sooner. Isadora. Isadora. He confirmed it flatly. She'd already begun burying your memos by then. The watch was insurance, in case burying paperwork wasn't enough to discredit you. Grace absorbed this slowly. That's a lot of effort just to get rid of one operations specialist. You made her look replaceable, Damian said. In my experience, the people who fight hardest to diminish someone are usually the ones most frightened of being outshined by them. The reports that followed the internal investigation revealed something no financial statement could measure. People had trusted Blackwood because Grace had made them feel understood. For years, Damian had believed the company's greatest strength was its influence. Now he understood it had been its people, more specifically, one woman who had never asked for recognition. The following Monday, Damian canceled every meeting on his afternoon calendar. His assistant looked startled. Should I reschedule them? No. Is there somewhere you need to be? Yes. He picked up his car keys himself. No security detail, no executive escort, no media. His assistant hesitated. Should I inform anyone? Damian buttoned his jacket. Not this time. Grace had left Blackwood 2 weeks earlier, having accepted a director-level position at a smaller logistics firm across town, a company that had actively recruited her after word of the Isadora Fenwick investigation quietly circulated through industry circles. It paid better, offered a real seat at the decision-making table, and came without 3 years of accumulated whispers following her through the hallways. She was arranging folders inside her new office when someone knocked gently on the open door. Without looking up, she smiled. If it's another welcome basket, I promise the candy drawer is already full. No answer came. She lifted her head. Damian Kessler stood quietly in the doorway, not in an expensive boardroom, not surrounded by assistants, simply a well-dressed man holding a small paper bag from the bakery across the street. Grace blinked. You came alone. I did. No bodyguards. They'll be disappointed. She laughed. No executives. I wanted this conversation to belong to us. He held up the bag slightly. You'd better sit down before your new coworkers think you're hallucinating. He did sit. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was simply honest. Grace finally nodded toward the bakery bag. Peace offering? Recommendation. He placed it on her desk. I was told their cinnamon rolls are exceptional. She peeked inside. They are. I conducted extensive research. You asked the receptionist. I did. He smiled. A quiet smile that softened the composed expression so many people found intimidating. I'm glad to see you happy. I am. She looked around her office. It's different here. In a good way. A healthier way. People come to me for advice before crises become emergencies. My team openly credits one another. Nobody seems interested in office politics. She paused. I still work long hours. I simply no longer carry the invisible weight of proving I belong. Damian nodded slowly. I'm pleased. She studied him for a moment. You didn't drive all the way here to evaluate my office. No. Or recruit me. No, I've already accepted that answer. Grace leaned back in her chair. Then why are you here? For perhaps the first time since becoming head of an empire, Damian chose complete honesty over careful wording. I came to thank you. She looked genuinely puzzled. For what? He smiled. A quiet smile that softened the composed expression so many people found intimidating. For teaching a man who spent his life controlling an empire. He paused. That the most valuable person in the room isn't always sitting at the head of the table. Grace lowered her eyes for a second, visibly touched. You figured that out on your own? No, I only recognized it after you were gone. Another comfortable silence settled between them. Then Grace chuckled. So the chairman of Kessler Holdings drove across the city just to say thank you. I believe that's exactly what happened. You know, she folded her arms with playful amusement. Your scheduling has improved dramatically. I've been learning from an operations specialist. They both laughed. Outside the office window, employees hurried through another ordinary workday, completely unaware that two people were quietly closing the chapter that had begun with one humiliating mistake. Neither of them spoke about accusations or gossip or jealousy. Those battles had already served their purpose. Respect had become friendship. Friendship had quietly become something deeper. Neither rushed to define it. Some stories didn't begin with grand declarations. Some began with a sincere apology. Others with a billionaire kneeling on a conference room floor to return a scattered handbag. Neither Grace nor Damian had imagined that one mistaken accusation would become the first page of their love story. And this time, they intended to write every chapter together. If this story reminded you that respect is worth more than titles, let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who's ever been underestimated in a room full of people who should have known better.